Today on the podcast, I got to interview Antonis Antoniadis, a client and colleague in the health and wellness space. Antonis is a nutritional science and naturopath with over 7 years of clinical experience. He specializes in integrative health and BICOM bioresonance therapy, helping people navigate complex health challenges through personalized nutrition, natural medicine, and holistic therapeutic approaches designed to restore balance at the root. Today's conversation talks about the ups and downs of the healing journey, focusing on anxiety, flares, food fear, and overthinking. I hope you enjoy it. I cannot tell you how many people I've talked to who have done a laundry list of diets and supplements, and they are still so confused about their health, dealing with chronic fatigue, chronic pain, and chronic symptoms still. At Nutrition with Confidence, we do not believe in quick fixes. We help you bio-individualize your diet and lifestyle recommendations and walk you through a step-by-step process that helps you to rebuild your body and calm your nervous system through it. This helps you regain control of your health and build confidence in your ability to heal. If you're interested in finally getting to the roots of your chronic symptoms, schedule a free exploration call at nutritionwithconfidence.com. All right, let's jump in to this amazing conversation we have. We want to talk about the ups and downs of the healing journey here. And actually, I was dreaming last night about fractals. And I have to say this right off the bat because fractals are my nerdy self is just going to come out here with the beauty of the mathematics of fractals. And I've been reading this amazing book about how the heroine's journey or our healing journey is really like fractal in a way. And we're going to talk about the ups and downs and kind of the split offs and everything. But first, Antonis, will you share as a practitioner and someone who's also been a client in the client seat in your own healing journey, what do you think is the goal of the work we do, changing our diet, taking supplements, changing our lifestyle? Like what is the goal and what's the point?
Wow. I would have probably given you a very, very different answer if you asked me this question before I started my own healing journey. But I think there's a saying, you have lots of problems until you have a health problem. When you have a health problem, you only have one problem. Nothing else really matters. And I guess the goal is to be able to do the things that you like with the people that you love, enjoy the activities that you like, enjoy the foods that you like, enjoy to be able to, I guess, to be able to be present and calm and um you know my journey very well, and it's been a roller coaster. And some of the things that we started working with together, I think maybe, is it 5 years? 5 years ago now,
Five
right?
years. Yeah.
And you always ask this beautiful question whenever we have a session. The first question you ask me is, any wins, right?
Mhm.
Any wins? Um, I love that question, but it also frustrates me sometimes because I'm always thinking, oh, there's got to be something. Did something, but I remember when I started sort of dealing with the dysautonomia symptoms and all those things, and one of the things that really upset me was the inability to tolerate coffee, right? So I love coffee, beautiful ritual. A lot of people relate to this. A lot of people love their morning coffee and all that. And when I was unable to tolerate it, I remember it took about maybe a year and a half till I was able to have coffee again. And I remember how excited I was when you asked me the question, what was any wins? And I was like, yes,
Yeah.
I can tolerate coffee and all that. But, we speak of, why we do these things, the idea of good health. I think the idea of good health is to be obviously healthy enough to do the things that you love, enjoy your time with the people that you love, but also to be healthy enough to be able to adapt. I think that we should be able to occasionally do some things that might not be considered the healthiest things, right? But your body is healthy enough to adapt to whatever we throw at it, right? So,
Yeah. Hmm.
I know uh, how good we are with our diets and how careful we are to avoid certain ingredients and sugar and all these things, right? But I feel like people should be healthy enough to be able to do some of these things and react well
Yeah.
to those things once in a while, right? You
Yeah.
shouldn't have to be stressed all the time about everything being perfect. Your body should be able to adapt. And I think that's my definition, if you like, of good health. And that's why we do what we do.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm not sure how do you see it? It's very, very different. Like after everything, I see it from both perspectives as well, like as a practitioner, but also as someone who's gone through quite a bit in
Right.
the last 5 years.
Right. I completely agree, especially with what you said about how it changed. Your goal changed. When you said you would have answered this question so totally different before you are where you are now. And I agree. I think when I look back to before I got a lot of my health issues, skin issues, hormonal issues, and most of it was really chronic. There wasn't like a big crash in my health, I would say. So there would be little things that just kept popping up. And so for me, it kind of created this story for myself that like I was different and
Mhm.
that I had to be more careful. I was more fragile. And I see this also in a lot of clients. And I read books partway through my healing journey on the adverse childhood experiences and autoimmunity and how the autoimmunity can be triggered by trauma, right? And
It-
right,
yeah,
and part of it's very true that sometimes it's deeper than just physical, like the illness that we experience, the symptoms that we experience don't just they're not just physical or yeah, there's an
yeah.
emotional component there too.
So
And
nine out
yeah.
of 10 of clients that I have with autoimmune conditions, when we go through their history, they always say
Mm.
it started after a very stressful event, a death of a loved one or a breakup. It's something that was, very, very stressful to them. And 9 out of 10 times, that's when it started. Right after that, they will always say, right after this happened.
Yes, exactly. So, you know, my healing experience, all of these symptoms, I do think are part of my body trying to become, like you said, with this goal. I do see it now as like trying to become more resilient. My body is just working towards that. So when I experience symptoms or I feel ill and do get sick, with symptoms, that it's not, I see those differently than when I first started. When I first started healing and changing my diet, it was to fix it. I wanted to completely get rid of these symptoms for good. I thought that it was because there was something wrong with me still, like there was a reason why I kind of jumped into it. But I also knew that like luckily the practitioners that I worked with and the protocols that I kind of dabbled in, Well, the ones that really helped me, they had that same approach of that looking at my body as like, it's perfect. It's responding actually exactly the way it needs to. And so the goal of our work is not to eliminate, although those will actually kind of happen over time if you continue to focus on just nourishing yourself and building that resiliency. But it doesn't mean like we don't keep pushing ourselves and uh, trying to diversify the diet and have a little bit of these modern assaults just because we have to exist still. Yeah, I want to tell a story too about this with a recent client of mine who had a similar journey of just jumping into the diet, doing all the lifestyle things, doing it perfectly. But she realized that what true health for her was she wanted to become a performer. And so staying up late which was like completely opposite of these recommendations for like optimal sleep, was actually what's more aligned for her. So she needs to get healthy enough and stable enough just to be able to go out and perform at night in the capacity that like that's her healing journey is to be able to do that. And that's it's ignoring that would be a shame, like that would be a detriment to her health, right? So thoughts
Yeah,
on.
I mean, a lot of this is I see a lot of this here here in Cyprus. Like my father, for example, I think one of the reasons he's so healthy is how much he socializes.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about the Mediterranean diet all the time, and we talk about all these, all these things, the olive oil, the this,
Yeah.
that, but he's out every single night with a group of his friends, they're socializing very, very often, often doing things that we consider unhealthy. They'll smoke, they'll have a glass of wine, and all this. But if you take that side away, I think that they would start to get sick if you took away that thing that gives them so much joy, that thing that they enjoy so much. I think they would actually start getting sick more often, even though, like I said, they might be smoking, they might be drinking, they might be, and I'm not saying these are healthy things, by the way.
Yeah,
I'm just saying,
exactly.
despite those things, right? Despite those things,
Yes.
um, you know, it's very, yeah, it's very interesting to look at that way. I mean, and that gives a lot of people motivation, right? So
Mhm.
if you've come from a health condition where you were bedbound, or you had, I mean, I remember at the beginning with me, if I broke routine, if I didn't go to sleep at the same time, um, I would pay for it for days, right? So I would be extremely fatigued for days.
Mhm.
And there was other side effects to that, the brain fog. There was a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
And then when I was in that condition, one of the things that motivates you a lot are those little wins that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Being able to socialize again, being able to see, your
Mhm.
friends again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very. It comes back to that first question, doesn't it? Like, what's the picture of true health? You
Yeah.
know, I come back to that, being able to do the things that you love, right?
Mm-hmm. 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 Yes. Yeah. I think some people will use that that story of, oh, well, this person has true health, and they're still doing all the XYZ that's unhealthy for them. I think a lot of people will use that as an excuse to just continue behaviors that maybe not are serving them. And I think that's the true responsibility that we're asked of in our own healing journeys is really taking an honest look at yourself and not looking at other people and being
Yeah,
like, well, they can do it, so I should be able to do it. No, that it's like, where are you at? And you don't, and then I heard you just say, like, you, there are so many little things that you take for granted when you're actually sick. And so it's this paradox of, well, I can't even do the things
yeah,
that I want to do when I'm sick. So I might as well do some things to get to the point where I can do the things that I want to do or that I want to do. It's a
Yeah.
paradox. And there is this point of just being really brutally honest with yourself of like, is this truly serving me? And it can change too. Like always, it will evolve as we evolve and transform at the different phases of our healing journey and the fractals that we get on. I want to move on to this other question here for us to talk about. So, why do you think it's still important to, wait, let's look at this question again. Okay, why is it still important despite pushback that is fear-based? So, um, let me specify a little bit more. So why is it still important to do these things despite like the pushback that all of this is fear-based of like you're gonna get ill if you drink that wine, all in this. Like, how do you find why do you like yeah, how do you communicate that it's still really important without the fear, I guess?
Interesting. Hmm. If we're looking at it from a perspective that everyone's different, uh, whether that's whether we're talking about, everyone's a unique bio individual, or whether we're talking about uh, character, or whether we're talking about different things. Um, I feel like, see, there's a lot of aspects to that, right? We never want to sort of give in to any sort of fear, right? But there's somewhere where you need to draw the line. And I mean, for somebody who's already a diabetic, or for somebody with, let's say, I'm not going to say severe, but let's say something like mild COPD or something. Uh, you know, um, yeah, maybe you shouldn't smoke. For somebody who's a diabetic, yes, maybe you shouldn't have a hot cake. I think it's case dependent, but you shouldn't be afraid. You shouldn't be afraid of all these things. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I think one of the things that I've learned the last sort of 5 or 6 years is that pretty much everything has a solution. If you want it, pretty much everything has a solution. So nothing is sort of like, a death sentence, if you like, where, you have to live like this the rest of your life, and you have to do this, you have to do that. When I started this journey, I remember the first time I did a little research on dysautonomia, and I remember, the first thing I saw was like along the lines of, people with dysautonomia usually have uh, diagnosed with dysautonomia about another 10 years to live, or something like 10-year life expectancy after dysautonomia. That's the first thing that I read looking
Wow.
into this, and that was before I knew about Mary or you, or Dr. Natasha, or anyone else. And when I first read that, after the initial shock, I was like, no, if there's a way, I'm going to find it. Right? If there's a way, I'm going to find it. And then, I mean, you know Mary's story very well, and you've gone through quite a bit yourself. And then suddenly you find yourself, and I found myself like in a community of people dealing with this, but in a community of people who have found solutions for this, right? In a community of people who have found all sorts of different solutions, and in a community of people who have actually, you found the people that said, "Hey, I had this and I healed it," right? So if one person could
Yeah.
do it, then so can you, right? And why am I saying this? I mean, if I understood your question correctly, the reason I'm saying this is because, um, yes, there are cases where you shouldn't fear at all, and you should enjoy it, because sometimes the fear and the stress are worse than the actual condition, and they can create a much bigger problem than what you're trying to avoid. Um,
Mhm.
but there's also, I think there's also cases where, sorry, something's happened to my screen here.
No problem. You
Yeah.
can edit that out.
So there's also cases where it's almost like, hey, you've got to live to fight another day, right?
Hmm.
So that's why I'm saying it's sort of case dependent, right? I'm pretty sure that if I ignored everything, all the advice, and was consuming alcohol and overdoing it on coffee and eating the wrong things when I was with severe dysautonomia, I'm pretty sure that I would have suffered for it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can't, when possible, you can't take it to the extreme where you have nothing in your life that you're enjoying. It can't go to that extreme. I'm not entirely sure if
That
that's what you
is
mean, that
exactly.
question, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It was, I didn't write it correctly because, well, when I wrote it, it was right off of the first question, which is like why it's so important to do this work. And so, yeah, but there is a lot of pushback about don't do it because it's so fear-based. Like there's a lot of people who I think I've I've worked with who they struggle with this desperation because at some points it feels very life or death with symptomology
Yeah.
and uh and some of that I've really struggled with trying to well myself I've struggled with this and sometimes I wonder if there's just a in our societies, especially the Western societies, there's a fundamental like underlying fear of death in and of itself, right? And aging and being ill and having these kinds of severe being especially severely ill where you're bedridden if you have chronic fatigue syndrome so or dysautonomia where you really cannot hardly do anything and there's extreme symptoms sometimes that does provoke a lot of fear and I you had a great answer because uh yeah, it just paints that picture very well. Like in some cases it's not that it's actually fear. I actually think fear should not be feared. That we
Yeah.
shouldn't shy away from fear even sometimes, but it can take hold of us. And when it's stuck fear, I think that's something to look at. Only because when I had a great experience with a therapist myself here, because we've been told our whole lives to push through fear and to be fearless and to be brave and jump through all of, fight to the end, right? That's what we're told to do from like an early age. And I had done that my whole life and I just felt like I was scrambling and fighting just like always for my life. And then my therapist told me, well, sometimes you're standing on the edge of a cliff and you feel afraid, and that fear, it prompts you to take a step back. And that's actually good and wise
Mhm.
to listen to the fear, right? So fear is not all bad, too. And I want to bring this up actually go down a little tangent here with on the social medias. There's all this, confusing information about like, do this, don't do this, because it's like they're just, especially within mold community, like if you've gone down that rabbit hole, there's all
Mhm.
kinds of, people on one side saying like, the whole mold industry is fear-based and they're just trying to scare you out of your money and it's not real at all. And then there's on the other side, like definitely people being very fear-based. And I do see that, but I think it's also kind of granted to some degree. And also that I think it's probably a side effect of like the mold because mold activates that fear limbic response very, very strongly. in
It's
individuals. So,
it's difficult to tell. I think nowadays it's much harder to tell what's what, right?
yeah.
It's really funny actually because um I think I think the reason I started doing a little social media, and I don't like being in the spotlight, right? I don't like being in the spotlight at all. I'm not a big fan of social media. I find it very difficult to do what we're doing now, a podcast or to record a video or to do these things, right? And I think one of the reasons I decided to start doing these things was because that's one of the biggest reasons because it's so difficult to know what's true and what's not. What's fear based, what's who's trying to just get money off you, it's become so complicated now, right? I mean,
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah, there's too much, and I think one of the things that happens a lot is people forget that we're very, very unique. Every person is very, very unique, and there's no sort of one size fits all, right? I people that know me know how big I am on the carnivore diet and the keto diet and all these things, and they know how much I like those diets, and they've really helped me, right? And for me, especially when it comes to things like mental health, I think those interventions are incredible, right?
Yeah.
But I don't recommend them to everybody that I see, you
Yeah.
know, and for some people they could be problematic. There are specific conditions that you shouldn't be doing them,
Hmm. Hmm.
you know, and it's one of those things I think people get a bit, I don't know if this is the right word, dogmatic. They treat diet and lifestyle interventions like it's some sort of religion or some sort of cult or
Yes.
something along the lines, right?
Yeah.
So you made a point that you spoke about the mold community, right? Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
I think there's lots of similar examples to the mold community. I've seen it with the copper community, right?
Oh, yeah.
I've seen it there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it with the vitamin C. I see it with the thiamine community. Like I've seen people
Yeah.
talk badly about high dose thiamine, and
Hmm.
uh, I've seen it everywhere. I think it's all case dependent. You really have to
Yeah.
know where and how to get the correct information.
Hmm.
And that's very, very important. And I think one of the questions that I always ask when I'm receiving any kind of information is okay, sometimes it's very obvious that they're trying to sell you something. Sometimes it's just
Hmm.
ridiculous, this, right? But is this coming from a place of fear or from a place of love? And that's the question that you've got to ask, right? And if it's coming
Yeah.
from a place of fear, take a step back and reevaluate.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
and that's one of the best ways to understand.
Absolutely. I agree. And yeah, so not to just avoid the fear, but to be wise about the fear, I think is really another way to look at that fear. So despite the fear, despite yes, there's going to be people who are like, "Wow, you're really extreme," and it looks like you're doing all this stuff out of like fear of XYZ in your future. And you kind of have to balance that, actually for you, or it might be coming from a different place actually of why you're doing it. And when you first start, like this is again going back to the first question we talked about our own experiences. When I first started my healing journey, definitely there were a lot of things I did out of fear that I was getting worse, like to try to help myself. Was that all bad? Maybe not. It was definitely a learning experience. And then eventually these practices and ways of living and cooking and ways of taking care of my body be started to evolve out of like a place of love. Like I started to focus on that actually. Like I want to do XYZ out of a place of love, not fear. And that was a main focus. So what if though someone is experiencing symptoms when they're starting to do these things? And how do they know if this is from a healing perspective or like a healing Herx reaction, healing reaction, or if they're pushing themselves too hard?
This is one of the hardest things to do, in my opinion, because, and not that per se, but the fact that you've got to be very, very present in your healing journey,
Oh, I love
right?
that. Wait, say that again. You need to be.
You very
Mm.
present in your healing journey.
I just
Uh,
stop. Everyone just like really, that is so important. Go on, go on.
it's the only way you can truly understand that. And you've had me on the other side of a the other side of a video call uh, many times when I was concerned about something. You've seen me frustrated, you've seen me happy, you've seen the full range of the emotions, right? And many times there were many times that I was fearful about different situations and new symptoms. And uh, when it's happening to you, it's a roller coaster, right? And there's also the why me on why this, and I'm already doing so much. And, there's all these things, right?
Oh, yeah.
All
Yep.
these things are happening at the same time. But I think what helped me the most throughout this journey was learning to be present in my healing journey. And again, it's that question, right? Because I remember, I'll give you an example, right?
Yeah.
So one of the sort of worst symptoms that I get is is more mental for me, right? So if I do something wrong, the spiraling thoughts, the what I call the glutamic mind, if
Yep.
I can say that. And then, you get into fight or flight and you start having all these sort of fearful negative thoughts. And, it for most people, I think this tends to happen at night as well. So you stay in that state, you can't sleep properly, so on and so on. And I found myself that at the end, if you're present enough and you can step outside for just 1 second and you ask yourself, am I doing everything possible to correct this? Yes. It's 12 o'clock midnight. Is there anything else I could do in this moment? No. Go to
Mm.
sleep, look at it again
Yeah.
tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
And once you do that, you wake up in the morning, you might still have the symptoms, the problem might still be there, but you're like, oh, I'm still here. It didn't
Yeah.
kill me, it didn't destroy me, it did whatever it is,
Yes.
you had in your mind. And it's the same thing. Is when you can be present, in your healing journey, uh, you're more able to understand what we call a Herx reaction, or what is pushing too hard.
Mm.
And to be honest with you, if you're pushing too hard, you're healthier than you think.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Which is also really interesting information to take in, right? So it's not all bad to go to those extremes of okay, doing the things that you're doing, having some Herx reactions, having to face those with presence. Not just face them, but like hold yourself in that dark place, wherever that might be. But then when you start pushing yourself, it's like, oh, okay, like if you fully have that presence, you really can tell the difference. And
Yeah.
you're in tune with your body and it's actually like a cool thing to get. You're like, wow, I'm a lot healthier than I think.
You
Definitely.
eventually start playing around with it as well, and that's how you move forward. And what do I mean by
Yeah.
that? I will never forget. I will never forget this. But um, I was about 3 years into zero sugar, like zero sugar, right? I mean, no fruit, no honey, no healthy alternative, nothing, right? And one of the reasons that I originally went on a ketogenic diet was that I had sort of severe anxiety, depression, and so on, and the keto diet actually helped me.
Mm-hmm.
It helped me stop taking those horrible medications that I was taking. It stabilized me, gave me more energy, and so on and so on, right? But anyway, I was about 3 years into this, and I'll never forget this. 3 years without it, eating all the right things, like checking my ketone levels, everything. Like,
Yeah.
so
Dialed in.
yeah, yeah, dialed in completely, right? So me and my wife, we've we were in Barcelona. We came to Cyprus. We were visiting family. We went up on the mountains, right? So we're in the mountains in Cyprus, and this little shop, and he's selling some traditional Cyprus desserts. And now keep in mind that there's no sugar in this. They make it with grape, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's flour, there's gluten, there's,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
and I haven't had neither fruit, neither gluten at that point, maybe 3, 4 years, maybe more.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, do you know what? I feel good. I'm healthy. I'm going to have a little bit. So I bought a sort of piece. I cut some, a tiny piece like this, right? So I've had this piece, and it's about 2 o'clock at lunchtime, and I've had this piece, and about 5, 6 o'clock, we're sitting in the hotel, and I'm feeling like I'm having these very, very negative thoughts, this depressed feeling, but out of nowhere, right? And it literally felt like, oh my God, I haven't felt this in years. What's happened to me? Right? My
Mm-hmm.
wife turns around, she goes to me, hey, you had, that dessert. And I was like, oh my God, incredible. I was like, and that brought this on. So
Oh,
anyway, I was pretty sure that that's what
yeah.
happened. Right?
Yeah.
A week later, I was like, do you know what? I want to make sure, right? So I did it again, and exactly the same thing happened.
Mm,
Now, okay, maybe the second time, but the first time I wasn't. I thought I'm fine. I haven't done this in years. A small piece shouldn't affect me at all, and it,
mm-hmm.
and it did that.
Yeah.
And when we talk about Herx reactions and so on, and pathogen die-off and all these things, right? It
Mm-hmm.
affects everybody differently. And I know some people have different reactions to different things, but for me, it was more, it would always affect me in that way. It would always be my mental health and it would affect me that way. At the
Yeah.
beginning, I was very, very concerned, very worried about this. Today I laugh about it. Like,
Yeah.
I have times when I'll do it and I know,
Yeah.
and I can be present enough to understand that, oh, okay,
Yeah.
this is
This is what's
happening,
happening.
and I
Yeah.
don't spiral into fear. I don't start thinking like I used to, like, oh my God, why, is this a
Mm-hmm.
setback? What have I done wrong? What have I? No,
Mm,
I understand it. I've accepted that that's how it affects me.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I think since I've probably taken steps to improve that, and I now have the tools and I know what to do to stop it from affecting me
Mm.
so much.
That's amazing. Yeah. I think that's so powerful because that just takes time with knowing yourself more. And if there's a theme for anybody who gets sick like this, who really struggles with health issues, if you can acknowledge that this is a great opportunity to get to know yourself better, you will become so in tune with yourself. And that is a huge gift to the world because then you get to show up your optimal self in the world when you know how to navigate the
Yeah,
challenges that we're all facing because it a lot of people will say like yeah like why does this affect me this way, like you kind of mentioned that self-talk pattern that's really common I think for a lot of people of like why me, and it these things these things you start to learn are affecting everybody. It's just very different how that might affect another person. So, and really to stay focused just on, yeah, it's easy to go outward, but like staying present, which is like looking
Yeah.
inward, is such a great answer to a lot of the rest of the questions that I'm going to ask here. But one of
I mean,
the,
we could go down, we could look at it scientifically and start
yeah,
talking about, nutrients and minerals and
hmm
what's happening and the chemistry between them and all these things, right? But at the
yeah,
end of the day, I think, if you're present enough, it doesn't matter. You can.
yeah, yes, exactly. Actually, this is a lot of people are experience a lot of anxiety. Um, Anxiety was definitely a thing that I struggled with as well before doing a lot of dietary changes and lifestyle and psychological work too. But how do you know if your anxiety is just psychological or if it's physiological?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's a little bit easier for me to know in the sense that, um, I'm very good with my routine, right? So if I do something outside of my routine, it's very it's very obvious for me to tell what's affected me differently, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I'll I'll give you an example. Like, I know this is making the rounds on the internet the last year or so, but they say to you, don't have coffee first hour before you wake up, right? Um,
Yep.
if I do that straight away, which sometimes I do, I'm exhausted all day. Um, and I know for a fact that doesn't matter how well I slept, if I have it within the first hour, that's what it does. And it puts you in that cycle of drinking more and drinking more. But I mean, when it comes to anxiety and when it comes to these things, because I'm so sort of on point, if you like, with diet and everything else, um, if I do something differently and a certain feeling or certain like a panic attack comes on or something happens, I can pinpoint, I can pinpoint to what it is and why it happened and so on. And I understand that not everybody's like that, like as you
Mm-hmm.
know, I've got other reasons on why I want my diet to be on point and why it's important to me
Yeah.
and everything, and all those things. Um, but saying that, oof, I have so many clients. Right. So this opens up a lot of questions, right? It's really, really, really important to have the correct tests to get the right test done.
Mm.
And as you know, here in Cyprus, that's very, very difficult. Like it's very difficult to get genetic testing. It's very difficult to get a notes test, to get a sort of
Mm-hmm.
Dutch hormone test, to get all these things done, which would be super helpful, right? Super
Yep.
helpful.
Yeah.
But because I can't get these things here, and you can't sort of pinpoint a lot of what's going on with people is, and I feel in many countries in the world is sort of trial and error.
Yeah.
What I can say 100% is that if you take sugar and gluten out of your diet, I think I think it puts you in a much better position to deal with whatever sort of comes your way.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, I know people, again, I know people who, with drug-resistant epilepsy, they stop sugar and they stop having seizures. And then, 2, 3 months into it, they have a cupcake or they have a donut or they have something and they start having seizures again.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
I remember somebody talking about sugar and calling it a neurotoxin.
Mm.
And for some people, it really is a neurotoxin.
Yeah.
Um, it's
Absolutely.
difficult. It's difficult to pinpoint, though. To pinpoint, I would have to. I'm going to sound like a broken record now, but I'm going to have to go back to that same thing and say, if you're present in your healing journey, um, you will know. if
Mm-hmm.
if what you're doing is chaotic, right? So if you're eating anything and everything, if you don't care about triggers, if it's sort of you're not careful with blue light, you're not getting sunlight, you're not ground, you're not, if you're doing all the wrong things, it's difficult to pinpoint
Mm-hmm.
what's going on and what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think you really have to be present. And one of the beautiful things about some of the diets that we talk about is that when I mention carnivore or keto to people, they get a little scared. And I think what concerns them is like they straight away they think, oh, I can't do this for the rest of my life. I don't want to do this
Yeah.
for, you know. And what I say to some people is that no, no, no. If you're going to do carnivore, do it for a week, right? And do it for a week, and then add back one item that you would normally eat, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And your body will tell you. What your
Mm-hmm.
body will tell you straight away what it thinks of that. And I had somebody do this for a week and he was on carnivore and he was like, I feel great. And not everybody feels great the first week, by the way,
Sure.
but he said, I feel great. And I haven't had a panic attack in like, since I started this. And
Amazing.
then the day after he had bread
Mm.
and he called me, said to me, I've I've just had a panic attack. I said to, what did I used to cry. He goes, no, I had bread today. He said to me, do you think it could be that? And I was like, well, I said to him, do a few more days
Yeah.
and try it again, right?
Yeah.
Same thing happened, right? So now he's thinking, oh
Right.
wow, like so I don't want to feel this way. So
Yeah.
maybe I should take this out. Or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
this guy, by the way, 6 months later, he got to a point where he was like, I know how I'm going to feel. Once in a while, I do it and I deal with the consequences, right? Now
Mm-hmm.
there's no more fear involved now because he knows what it's going to be and
Mm-hmm.
he makes a conscious decision. He weighs up the situation, says, you know what, I don't want to be
Yeah.
antisocial. I don't want to, you
Yeah.
know, and he does that.
Yes.
But it's with everything around us today, I think it's difficult to pinpoint
Mm-hmm.
where the anxiety or where the stress
Mm-hmm.
is coming from unless you're very present.
Yeah. I think it's there's merit to focusing more on these experiments and the trial and error that you're talking about because that is more material, like on the material plane of physiologically this impact from eating certain things that because of the history of no, it's just all in your, it's all psychological, it's all in your head. And some of the tools to work with that have failed people for so long. But I do think I kind of think it's both, but it's it's so much that it's so much both that we just have ignored the fact that our physiology greatly directly affects our psychological health, right? And
Yeah.
I can tell story after story also about clients who, um, I'll tell the story or I'll tell them examples of what can happen of these gut bugs really sending signals and personality traits completely change after, staying off of some of these when we're not feeding certain bacteria in the gut, we don't get excess anxiety, because and certain personality or behavioral traits go away, sugar addictions completely
Yeah.
gone, there's if it comes back when they eat the food, that just tells us that there's something there that really likes any kind of bacteria or something out of, and there's the mechanical components of just like all that sugar that can really disrupt our neurotransmitters and mitochondria function. So there's science to it, but it's also just, I think, the emotional anxiety that people sometimes get while on a diet. That I think is our limbic system and that is something those are the stories we tell ourselves, and that's the lack
Yeah.
of presence I think that we have because anxiety, it's not always the case that I think it's common that we are just lacking presence. And Eckhart Tolle is, always like someone who I point to with answers to this because, to some degree he would say like just being with ourselves is like That's all we need. So I love that you said that. It's just like I keep coming back to it. Um,
Tough lesson to learn, you know, and I'm sure
yeah.
you know this because I've been in, you know,
Mm-hmm.
situations where I've been very upset and frustrated and this and
Yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, definitely a tough one, but yeah,
Yeah. Yes, exactly. It's like the meaning that we can make of that experience is that it's trying to draw our bodies are trying to draw us closer to presence with ourselves, I think. And that mimics how, the closeness that we can get when we're close with ourselves, the connection we can have to other people is just broadened. The, connection to earth and nature is just expanded, and so you're gaining so much even though you're having symptoms, even if you're having anxiety. If you can be present and lean into it, you're going to gain so much from that experience yeah. So what
yeah.
why do you think it's so important? Just a few more questions here, I think, but we
We
should
got
talk.
time. We got
Yeah,
time.
we should talk about why slow is better than fast healing.
Ah, I think we've answered that already. You can't be present in your healing journey if you're trying to move super
Right.
fast. You don't
Awesome.
fully understand what you're doing, first of all, what's working for you, what's not working for you.
Hmm.
And to be honest with you, I think that most healing requires a regulated nervous system.
Yes,
And I'm not sure
absolutely.
you can have that with fast. You know, I'm sure everybody wants to, you know, everybody
Hmm.
wants to speed up the process, myself included. You know, I have times when I feel like that.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't think yeah, I don't think it's possible.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yep.
you might be able to get some stuff done and to maybe mask some symptoms and so on, but
Hmm. Hmm.
you know, I don't think it can be done in that way.
Hmm.
Um, and I also try to explain to people, right? Most people come with conditions that they've created over decades of you know, of bad habits, malnutrition. You know, you've created severe deficiencies over the last 20, 30 years. How long, right? You're not going to fix that in a week or two. You're not going to fix that in a month. It takes dedication.
Hmm.
Um, this is one of the things that I really want to sort of get people to understand. Uh, there are lots of conditions and sort of I don't know how else to put it, but lots of sort of conditions that we're told that there's nothing you can do about that. There's actually lots you can do about, right?
Hmm.
There's so
Hmm.
many things that people think, you know, this is a sentence, this is a death sentence, or this is a, you know, that it's really not, you know, it's really not. But it takes dedication. What took you 30 years to create is not going to get solved, you know,
Hmm.
in a week or two. You need to be disciplined, you need to work, and you need to want to heal. You need to really want it, right? And
Hmm.
it comes back to what we said before, like you know, you don't want it enough. Like if you want to, you have to weigh things, right? Like for me, for example, the symptoms were worse than the lifestyle, right? So if I do certain things, I go back to that sort of depressive anxiety state, which I dislike, you know, and I don't ever want to go back to those places, right? To those states. So
Hmm.
for me, it's not worth it. For me, a piece of bread is not worth it. Sugar is not, there's nothing there worth it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so you've got to weigh things and make a decision, right? If
Hmm.
if if it doesn't matter for you, then
Hmm.
you're not suffering enough in a way, you know, you haven't suffered enough to
Hmm.
want to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
There has to be enough will, and that the truth of humanity is that so much of our will comes from our suffering, I think. And we're like it's interesting because we create a lot of our own suffering as well, right? There's so much that we create of like resisting, and that's actually a lot of what Eckhart Tolle talks about is just not resisting, and that in turn stops this suffering that we create for ourselves. And at the same time, I think there are so many ways to the top of the mountain, right? So, actually, I wanted to mention a great book called The Alchemy of Illness by Kat Duff. And I just started reading that. She had chronic fatigue syndrome basically in the 1980s and wrote these essays about illness. And I mean, I'm not sure all of the things that she did to heal, but it was a 2 year process of she mostly, just in the beginning has talked about she just slept a lot. Like she really didn't do anything. She just went, inward and it was this transformational process, and it was almost a spiritual awakening to some degree for so many. I think we have to see that a part of it, that in not resisting our our symptoms. It doesn't mean we don't have a will to do different things for ourselves. If anything, we can find greater will power to actually care for ourselves in different ways. And so we can do the things like avoiding sugar or change our circadian rhythm, routine and add in some cold exposure or, little things or write a gratitude journal.
Yeah.
Some of those things can just be birthed out of being with yourself. So I like what you're saying, that there's, you know, you kind of have to suffer to some at some point to be awakened into this spiritual journey. And it's a gift. It really is a gift. I know Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride says these things, and like anyone who's really seen the darkness of illness, like
Yeah.
that's something our whole world wants to just, ignore and bury. And it's like we don't want to see that at all. But it is a part of humanity. It's a part of the human experience. We do get sick, come as little, Kat Duff writes, it's, as little as like a fever when you're a kid, or a cold, a cold that you get. Like we all know that experience is like almost like you're dying. And some people have much worse where it's more chronic, autoimmune, constantly having to go to the doctors, cancer, it's just depleting, fatigue, debilitating to fatigue, and other types of symptoms. But the nervous system piece of, first is, I guess, yeah, trying to say yes to the journey. It's like, okay, this is
Yeah. Yeah.
this is the calling in a way.
I have a
Um,
I have a friend, mentor, he always, he would say to me in a case like this, he would say to me, you've got to love it. Whatever it is, love
mm,
it. If
that's
it's,
great.
this and this is happening, yeah, you've got to love it. Once you love it, eventually it will go away. You chose to experience this. I mean, okay, we're going into we're going to other kind of conversations now, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
In a
I'm not
way,
I'm
yeah.
not going to open that.
The spiritual, yeah, it's different kinds of beliefs about how we come to be and the things that we experience in our lifetime. I get what you mean. We never know, but there's a lot of ways we can make
Yeah.
meaning of that. Um, how, let's see, how much time do we have left? Do we have a
We
little?
have we have time. Yeah, I think we're
Okay.
fine.
I want to have us talk about, building trust in our body again, because especially with the more severe
Yeah.
chronic autoimmune dysautonomia, you've experienced a couple different healing experiences. So like, how do we build trust again in our body?
Those are those little wins. Those little wins that we
Hmm.
talked about, so
Yeah.
so
Yes.
important, right? And you've
Yes.
seen me on both sides. I mean, there are times when you've asked me the question and I'm probably very frustrated because I didn't have one, you
Hmm.
know. But those little wins go a long way,
Yeah.
for me, like being able to have a coffee again,
Yeah.
being able to stay up slightly later and spend some time with friends, like those little things, like we said, that you we take for granted normally, right? Little things that we take for
Hmm.
granted. And for me personally, those things help me so much, so much. If we go into the sort of the practicality of it, if it's something like you're not tolerating certain foods, and then suddenly you've got one or two foods that you're now tolerating, that's,
Yeah.
you know, you got to appreciate that, and you got to celebrate those. You got to
Yeah.
celebrate those wins, right? You got to build
Hmm.
some positive momentum and everything.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
but if we're going to go into the more practical side of it, how do you do it? Discipline and willpower. Discipline and willpower. If you don't have, you've got to really want it.
hmm.
You have, if you really want it, it's possible, but you've got to really want it.
Yeah.
Because I'm saying all these things now, but for me to get to the point where I could tolerate more food or to be able to have a coffee again or stay up late again, I had to work.
You worked for it. You earned
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that I see it as this relationship too of, trust taking risk. We have to continually put ourselves out there to, think about a relationship, a loved one that you might have. So you have to in order to build trust, you have to give it. So you have to give it first to
Yeah.
your body. So practically what that looks like, I think for me, and actually something Mary talks, I learned from her in training with her. She shared a lot. She would have people, rewrite their stories. So with a symptom that they're experiencing, if you're down to two foods, you know, still acknowledging that there's more going well in your body than what's not going well because you're still alive. So turning any kind of fear, anything actually, any emotion can be turned into gratitude. That is first and foremost, I think, a great way to build trust in your body. Like when I'm walking down the street and like there's a lot of toxins that I can smell from, the gasoline or whatever, instead of, freaking out about it, I sometimes tell my body, put my hand on my liver and my heart, and I'm just like, body, you are so amazing taking care of me. Just so much gratitude for what my body can do. And even if I'm not able to walk on, there were times when I wasn't able to sleep at night and the sleep is hard for people, right?
Yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
just want to sleep
Yeah.
so bad, but it
Yeah.
would never work if I just was like, I want to sleep. Why can't you sleep, body? Blah, blah, blah. Shaming my body for not being able to sleep, like getting mad at my body for not being able to sleep. But when I would finally get to a place of like, all right, what am I supposed to be doing right now then? Like, okay, like what I'll be open to like I'm awake right now. I'm going to pray. I'm going to think about the people I love. I'm going to do the things that or like maybe write just I have so many journal entries from like times when I wasn't sleeping that are just like great ideas. Like, okay, someday I'll do something with these ideas.
There are so many
Right?
aspects to that. So many. I mean, you remember I think that was my worst, wasn't it? 18 months I had insomnia, right?
Yeah. Yes.
18 months, Jesus. And
Yeah.
one of the things that one of the things that stayed with me, I mean, obviously, when you have it for so long, and I remember for a very
Hmm.
long time, I wasn't getting more than 2 hours a night. Um,
Hmm.
and when you have it for so long, you know, you learn everything about it, really. At least I did. Like, uh,
Hmm. Yeah.
and then And then I got so many people coming to me after I healed it that needed
Mm.
help with insomnia, and that was
Wow.
that
Wow.
was one thing that I was like, okay. Same with mental health. I got a lot of people that came to me for that problem, but I
Mm.
had to go through it myself
Mm-hmm.
first, I guess. I guess that's how it happened, right?
Yep.
And how you deal with it changes as well. So if I have a night now where I can't sleep, instead of jumping back into fear or, oh my God, now I'm like, okay, well, I've been
Mm-hmm.
here before.
Yeah.
Uh, Not going to kill me, just going to be
Mm-hmm.
tired tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So what do I do? Okay, well, if I can't sleep, I'll do this, I'll do whatever
Yeah.
it was, right? And it changes, and I think it sort of reprograms your nervous system a little bit as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. You just start to trust that the body is doing what it needs to do, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes it's not what we think it needs to do, but and yeah, I mean, obviously, 18 months of lack of sleep, like you're like, what really is it doing? Like, why is it doing that? Um, it's hard to make sense of that, but really, like in the moment, it's not about like the big picture, like what was it? We don't have to figure that out. It's just being present for with yourself and giving that trust to your body. And I would say those words and journal them over and over about what my body was doing for myself, all the great things it was doing. It can tell like how you are treating it, what the loops that go through your, that you're not even aware of the thoughts that,
You get to a point, I guess, where the actual experience of going to bed to sleep, you're actually scared of it
yeah.
because
Mm-hmm.
you're dreading the time when you have to go to bed to sleep because you think, okay, it's not going to happen again, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to be tired and
Yeah.
all this.
Yeah.
But I've got to I've got to put this out there as well, right? Since we're talking about this. And
Mm-hmm.
I've got to say this because I think I probably spent thousands, thousands on different supplements, protocols, this, that, to try and fix my sleep problem. And I think what did the most for me was 2, 3 weeks of very, very strict circadian rhythm regulation.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's what gave me the the
Mm.
biggest results than
Mm-hmm.
anything else I tried, anything else I did. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
being being persistent with that, waking up every morning,
Yep.
catching the sunrise, making sure you see the sunset. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
for me, it had to be red light and blue light blockers
Yeah.
until I fell asleep, and just persisting, sticking to that. I think at some point, I probably went from maybe 2 to 4 hours a night, which was, you know,
Mm-hmm. Massive.
incredible,
Hmm.
incredible at the time, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, I had to say that because sometimes it doesn't cost money. Sometimes the things that we can do for us that that you don't. It's not a supplement. It's not a Sometimes it's the things are very, very, they're free. They're very simple. Anyone can do them.
Agreed. 100%. Yeah. Well, I guess those are all the major questions. I think we'll end there because I think that's a great place to end. But before we end, are there any things that you want to share? Any upcoming um, things that you want to market right now, or uh, yeah, where can people follow you? And then also, yeah, last healing words.
I
Oh,
mean,
I also love for you to share a question for our listeners to ponder. I try to do that at the end of every session.
you know what? I think, and this is possibly the perfect way to end this, but I think the question we started with is a very good question for people to ponder. Because what is your view of good health? How do you view good health?
Hmm.
I think that's an excellent one to
Hmm.
ponder.
I
Uh,
agree.
and I'm not going to say any more. I'm not going to say any more about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll leave it there. But yes, yeah, very, 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 very excited. Um, very excited to have you at the conference that we're organizing. I'm very
Hmm.
excited about the conference itself. Um,
Well, tell us about the conference.
this
What you
is very,
can.
very, this is very special for me. This is very, very special for me because as someone who's sort of um, suffered a lot myself with different health problems over the years, um, we try to get the best people in their fields to come and speak at the conference. It's very unique. It's very special for Cyprus. It's not been done before. There's actually some people that I'm even nervous to meet, like within the health industry, if you like, kind of starstruck to meet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Very exciting.
I don't mind mentioning I don't mind mentioning people. You know very well. Dr. Asim Malhotra is co-organizing with me.
Hmm. Hmm.
Very, very good friend. Dr. Natasha Campbell, I can't wait to meet her. She's played such an important role in my life, in my wife's life, in my son's
Yes.
life, incredible, like in all of
Mm.
us.
All of
Uh,
us.
yeah, there's so many. I can't pick, to be honest with you. So many people, like, it feels like my dream lineup in a way. We've got some excellent people that are going to talk about mental health and diet, which is a soft spot that I have, as
Hmm.
you may have realized today.
Yep.
Um, we've got, I would say, the leading gut experts in the world, Dr. Natasha and Dr. Sabine. Uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
you know, we've got a few surprises as well. I'm not going to mention everyone. We've got a few surprises that I haven't even mentioned to you. So,
Oh,
like,
so exciting.
let's let's see. But yeah, it'll definitely be a special event.
Hmm.
Um, September 26th in Cyprus. Um, yeah, I look forward to seeing you as well.
Yes. Yeah, me too. Awesome. Well, stay tuned, everyone, for follow up, information about the conference details in Cyprus. I'm so excited to speak there on the hormones and nutrition support for that. It's very, it's a dear subject in my own healing experience. Hormones are not the enemy. We just want to support them. So great to have this conversation on tennis. It was so great. So,
Thank you. Thank you
yeah.
so much, Natalie. I appreciate it.
Hmm.
Thank you for having me.